Hello and welcome to Freedom Tech Friday. For those of you that are new here, allow me to briefly explain what this is all about and why the hell we are here. Freedom Tech Friday is a weekly live and interactive show hosted on the Ungovernable Misfits, X, Noster, YouTube, and now Rumble and Twitch feeds as well. We are literally everywhere. We go live for 1 hour every Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern or 2 p.m. UK time, but the observant amongst you will notice that it's not 9 a.m. Eastern. Currently, it's 10 a.m. Eastern, so thanks for that, daylight savings, people. But you can, of course, catch up later on the Ungovernable Misfits podcast feed. I've got an echo. There we go. Stop that. Apologies. On Freedom Tech Friday, we like to cover the latest news and trends for anything related to freedom technologies. That could be anything from Bitcoin or Monero, encrypted messengers, privacy tools, and everything in between. Essentially, if there's a news item, tool, or topic that can help you take back some control in today's digital panopticon, we want to talk about it. My name's Q&A, and I'm head of customer experience over at Foundation, where we build Bitcoin-focused sovereignty tools. As always, I'm joined by my good friends Max, the head honcho at the Ungovernable Misfits Empire, and Seth, who is VP at Cake-Wallet. As I mentioned, this show is live and interactive, and we rely on you guys to steer us towards the topics that you want us to cover, or to send us your freedom tech related questions that you want answering. There's loads of ways in which you can get involved in the show. That includes commenting or asking questions in the live chat, submitting your topics or questions before the show on X or Noster, boosting the show on Fountain or any of the other Podcasting 2.0 apps, sending in your questions and tips via XMR chat, or just sharing the show on your social feeds. Top support for last week's show about spending your sats comes from Orange Horizon, who boosted on Fountain with 5,000 sats, and they said, "Hi guys, appreciate the good work. In relation to the topic of this episode, check out bullishmarket.onrender.com, which is a new online marketplace for vendors who accept Lightning payments for products. Imagine a fusion of Noster, Instant Messenger, the retro game Zelda, and your local farmer's market. The market stall displays each vendor's products, and bartering is encouraged. Customers chat with the vendor, and once a price is determined, a Lightning invoice is posted and the trade can occur. Please support if you want Bitcoin to be money." Interesting. I've not heard of that one. Well, thank you for your support. Who was it? It was Orange Horizon. Without further ado, we're back as a threesome once again. Max, Seth, how is it going, guys?
Good, mate. Good to be back. Earache, but other than that, your sweet, sweet voice is soothing the ears.
Are you sure Q&A is not the reason for the It seems more likely. I mean,
I was going down that route.
Hey,
you beat me to it.
Listen,
you were going to insult yourself?
Don't push him. He's already had his nail tech delay him this morning. That's why we're late. And now we're insulting him. There's only so much he can say. And he lives in the UK still. He's having a hard time.
That's the real pain. The real pain.
I think we can all agree by saying, starting the show by saying, fuck daylight savings time. I literally realized like 30 minutes before we were due to go on live that it wasn't the time that everybody thought it was and that we were not aligned. Apologies for the Americans or anybody on the non-UK time zone, because you have been affected here. So appreciate if you can make it. But I have noticed that the Nostal live chat's a little bit quieter than normal. But hello to Observer and Bon. Seth, quick one. How was Lugano?
Oh man, it was fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I abused my speaker privileges and basically just chatted with other people building awesome freedom tech all weekend long. So it was a good way to just sit there, drink cappuccinos, enjoy the nice view, and talk to people about Spark, about Arc, about Lightning, about privacy, about everything under the sun. So I love those. I love those chances. They assembled a really, really good group of speakers this year. Better than in a year, I think, in the past. Obviously, I have my own preference for type of speaker that isn't suits and isn't bankers and all the other stuff that sometimes is common in these Bitcoin conferences. But they had a really fantastic lineup on the P2P stage, which is like their FOSS Freedom Tech focus stage, and that was a ton of fun. I only saw one panel. I just don't really go to content when I'm at these things. Priority for me is chatting with people. But that was a really good time. Had a great time with the cake team as well. We got a bunch of us out there, kind of did an impromptu team retreat alongside the conference. Got to have a delicious steak and wine dinner with the Bull Bitcoin team and chat all things PayJoin and silent payments and ARC. And yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time. I am incredibly blessed.
Yeah, I got a massive amount of FOMO seeing pretty much everyone who's anyone was there. It seemed like a stacked out panel or speaker list, and the scenery wasn't all bad either.
No, it was definitely fantastic. I made the most of it this year too. I found out there's like a funicular that goes up the mountain right next to Lugano, and got like the mountain view from above everything, and it was even more insane. So yeah. Definitely, if you ever have the chance, anyone listening, or you and UQ and Max, obviously, get there. It's incredible.
That makes me think. Seth, you were just talking about Cake Wallet Retreat. We've never had an ungovernable retreat. Feels like Lugano could be the spot.
Ooh, go work out of the POW.space there.
I just need to get Max to put his hand in his pockets.
The other day. Yeah, well, I got short arms and long pockets, mate. I was thinking about it the other day. I was thinking it would be really cool to do like not a retreat, but just like a big get together. I don't know where the place would be. We'll think on that. It would be good.
Yes, definitely. Let's make that happen. I want to meet John in person. It's been too long.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, indeed. Anyway, let's get down to business, gentlemen. This week's topic actually comes from one of our ungovernable listeners over on Nostr. Eldorado asked for an overview and a comparison of Bitcoin's layer 2 spending protocols, especially in terms of privacy and their suitability for both online and in-person payments. So today we are going to do exactly that. I think this is the first overall topic that we've had decided by a listener, even though we do ask every week. So it just goes to show that if you do ask, you do get. So thank you for your question, Eldorado, and I hope we can, over the course of the next 50 minutes or so, do it justice. So I guess to kind of set the scene, Bitcoin, the quote base layer or layer 1 is, as we know, secure and robust. But it's not designed or simply cannot handle every single possible global transaction that exists today, even if we wanted it to. To scale Bitcoin to that manner, or to scale the layer 1 would definitely compromise on the ideals and the principles of Bitcoin, like decentralization, etc. So a whole host of, an entire ecosystem of layer 2 solutions. And I'm using layer 2 here in air quotes for reasons that will become clear in a couple of minutes. Loads of these options have emerged, from Lightning to Liquid, Spark, Arc, RGB, ZK rollups, things like Citria. There's loads of stuff, and we're going to unpack all of those today, including their trade-offs, their privacy implications, and if one is suited for one aspect of kind of Bitcoin scaling, whereas one might be better suited for a different kind of more niche use case. But before we dive into the specifics of those, I think it makes sense to quickly set the scene with some basics. So, Max, I've alluded to it a little bit, but why do layer 2s and Bitcoin scaling solutions need to exist in the first place? What's the problem that we're trying to solve here?
Well, Bitcoin has a slow, 10-minute block time. So if you want to make faster payments, and it also has limited space. So if you want to make lots of payments and make them faster and make them cheaper, and unlock things like micro payments or like podcasting 2.0, things like that, you need something to be built on top of it. You can't just make normal Bitcoin payments.
Seth, sorry, you cut me off guard there, Max. Seth, anything to add to that? Or do you think you nailed it?
He was too concise.
Yes,
He
was.
was ready.
Man, a few
He was
words.
prepared.
Man, a few words.
Yeah, I mean the biggest things really are, like you mentioned, like we need a way to be able to make these payments, but there's also just a lot of stuff on layer one we can't do well because of how limited Bitcoin's layer one is. Like it works for basic payments. It has some basic scripting capabilities, but there's just a lot of limits because of the 10-minute block time. Because of that limited scripting, we can't do a lot of things with advanced functionality. We can't do a lot of things with better privacy without taking that to a place where we have a little bit more flexibility. Obviously, what you can then do in a layer two is still somewhat constrained by what you can do on layer one. I don't know. We'll unpack a bit of that. Specifically, I think when we're talking about Arc or Arcade OS, the specific implementation of Arc. But I think there's a lot of room for growth, not only from a payments perspective when we're talking layer twos, but also from a programmability perspective to be able to do a lot of things that you're just simply not going to be able to do on layer one, or that would be incredibly, incredibly difficult to do on layer one. That get much easier when you're able to take it into something off chain and something that you don't have to publish every aspect of it on chain.
Yeah, that's a good carve out. I'm glad you kind of added that. Also, I just want to spell out that the irony is not lost on me that we're having this discussion when 1 sat per byte has got you into the next block for the past God knows how many weeks. And I'm looking at
sat per byte.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm looking at mempool.space right now, and you can actually get into the next block with 0.4 sats per byte. And there's literally a measly 23 blocks in mempool's mempool. So the irony is not lost on me, guys. So let's just view this with a lens to look into the future and that utopia of mass adoption. Go ahead, Max.
I was going to say, like, there's still certain things, even if it's very, very low fees, that you wouldn't be able to do. Like we said, like the podcasting 2.0 stuff.
Right.
You're not going to be able to do that. You can't just send 1 sat, or you know what I mean? Like it's just not reasonable to be building these type of things. And podcasting 2.0 has been really, really good for us personally. It's something that I appreciate personally. And the other thing is, like, for payments and things like that, if we ever did get to a world where you are paying in store or in person, it's not reasonable to wait for a block to confirm or 3 blocks to confirm. And so if you have layer twos, you're in a much better position to be using this as money if that ever happened.
That's also another good call out. Yeah, the speed of transactions is a good one that you can't kind of fix, or we wouldn't want to fix really, because again, we don't want to compromise on decentralization and all of the kind of tie-ins that we have around block time, etc. So good call out. All right, so before we start comparing the different scaling projects, again, using that term intentionally, it's worth pausing to ask kind of a simple but all-important question. What really makes something a Bitcoin layer 2? Because the term gets used very loosely across the industry to define a number of things that may or may not be an actual layer 2. And I guess this could very much be subjective as well. Loads of projects wear the L2 or layer 2 label when you could argue that their relationship with Bitcoin is somewhat more distant than what we might consider to be a true layer 2. So I guess let's discuss like why that definition matters, and just to get us started, Max, like how would you define a Bitcoin layer 2?
I guess anything where the transactions that are being made are not settled at the time onto Bitcoin, but then are eventually settled on Bitcoin layer 1. So something that can allow more payments to be made, but eventually do settle down. And if it's not something that's settling back to Bitcoin, then I kind of wouldn't really say that it's a layer 2.
I'm really, really glad that you fell into my trap there. So thank you for that. So does that mean that Coinbase is a layer 2? Because I could send some Bitcoin from my Coinbase account to your Coinbase account, if we had one, of course. Mm-hmm. That would settle, by your definition, later on chain, in theory, if we wanted to withdraw from them. So would that mean that Coinbase could be defined as a Bitcoin layer 2, or am I kind of being a little bit hyperbolic there?
I don't know, really. I guess it is.
Let us
It
know
would
in the
be a
chat.
type of scaling. Yeah, I don't know. It would be a type of scaling, wouldn't it? Don't know is the answer.
All right.
Not
I know
something
I know Seth got some hot takes here, and he's probably going to disagree with the fact that Coinbase is a layer 2, as I do, to be perfectly clear.
Shocking.
So Seth, let's bring you in here and let me know. Well, first and foremost, I'll ask you exactly the same question. How would you define a Bitcoin layer 2?
Whew, a lot of people have spent a lot of words trying to find like a really good definition for L2, and there's a lot of disagreement. So I won't necessarily say like this is the definitive definition, but the way I think about a Bitcoin layer 2 is that it's something that allows users to unilaterally exit from, which means you can move your funds from that layer 2 back on chain without any assistance from anyone within that layer 2, without any reliance or trust on them, I should say. So unilateral exit, that's like, that has to be a part of it for me to consider it a layer 2. Alongside that, I would say the fact that the state within that layer 2 being anchored back to Bitcoin in some clear trust minimized or trustless way is another aspect of that. So like, instead of just doing everything off chain and then just hoping that people don't cheat, you need some way to essentially allow Bitcoin's layer 1 to enforce the trust properties of that second layer. So like, that's another aspect of that. And I think the third would be that you, and this kind of goes with unilateral exit, but you have control of your keys and movement of funds within the layer 2, and it's Bitcoin. It's not an IOU. It's not something like that, but it's actually Bitcoin within that layer 2. So like Lightning's a good example of this. It is not trustless. It's trust minimized, but it has unilateral exit. You can force close your channel at any time. It anchors back to Bitcoin's chain. When you close a channel or open a channel, you're essentially establishing state in Lightning on chain. And it uses Bitcoin to enforce the trust assumptions within the Lightning network. So that's like obviously the normal core example, but those are the criteria that I would place on it. There are a lot of things. There's been like this like Bitcoin L2 season thing happening where there's a ton of things that are just like bridges claiming to be Bitcoin layer 2s. They're not layer 2s. That's someone else taking custody of your money and theoretically giving you a cool thing to play around with on the side. But I think those fall kind of outside that camp.
Yeah, nicely done. You kind of said what I was going to say, and weirdly, Vibrant commented with literally the words unilateral exit as soon as they came out of your mouth. So I think we've just docked one of your sock puppets there, Seth.
Oh no, I was too fast on the draw.
The timing was impeccable. But yeah, good call out there. So would you say, now that we've defined kind of a layer 2 and that all important unilateral exit that we've seen, the term bandied around, would we, if we step away from the term layer 2 and just step back to scaling solution, would you see something as the old wallet of Satoshi, the custodial version, pre-Spark, we'll get into that later, would you see that as a scaling solution for Bitcoin? Because, again, loaded question, but they could, in theory, onboard millions of people and it have little to no impact to the base layer. It could allow more and more people to transact with air quotes Bitcoin, albeit in a custodial fashion. So could we deem that as a scaling solution, albeit it has a shit ton of negative trade-offs?
You could say it's a scaling solution because it does scale it, but it's not. It's handling transactions off chain, and you don't have control of it. So it's not really Bitcoin in my view. Like, if you don't control your sats, it's a different thing. Which it would kind of be the same as like what you were asking before, like Coinbase. Does Coinbase scale Bitcoin? It's like, yeah, but you don't have control, so it's not really Bitcoin. I
think like it comes down to what does scaling Bitcoin actually mean? Because is it scaling access to Bitcoin, the monetary unit? I guess. Like, you can theoretically have Bitcoin in Wallet Satoshi, But whether or not you actually have that Bitcoin is always up for grabs. Same with Coinbase, etc. Like it's not your Bitcoin, it's someone else's. They may not even have the Bitcoin to send for you if you decided to send out of that system. Hopefully they do, but it's all trusted. But I think it's like two very different things. Like scaling Bitcoin usage has to include actually using Bitcoin to count as scaling usage, in my opinion. Like actually in some way transferring Bitcoin to another person in a way that is provable. Whereas I think you're scaling custody by giving up custody to someone else. You're letting more people hold Bitcoin, the asset, but not actually the Bitcoin, the freedom tech, Bitcoin, the freedom money. So it's kind of like, I don't know if that's too semantic, but like scaling Bitcoin to me kind of breaks down when like the people actually like quote unquote using Bitcoin in these scaling solutions like eCash, like Wallet of Satoshi, they're not using Bitcoin. They're using someone's centralized ledger, centralized database, and hoping that at the end of the day, they can get Bitcoin if they need it.
It would be the same as like someone holding a gold bar or trusting a custodian and they give them a bit of paper saying they have it, or someone having cash or in theory having something in their account until the bank tells you, no, you're not having your money. It's the same thing. And that's like the thing that's so impressive and important to me about Bitcoin is that after dealing with banks and all the fuckery, knowing that you have something that you can control and can use and no one can stop you, that's the powerful bit. And as soon as you start using something like Wallet of Satoshi or any of these other like scaling solutions where you don't actually control it, the beautiful, magical, incredible part of it is gone.
I have to agree. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so going like the next step up this ladder, we've talked about custodial solutions and we've danced around the semantics of whether they do or do not scale Bitcoin. Where do kind of side chains and federated systems, obviously the one that springs to mind here is Liquid. Where do they sit in here? Like, is it the same application that it's kind of more of a semantic argument as to whether they scale Bitcoin? Seth, I'll hand it to you first. Maybe like outline how these differentiate themselves from custodial systems, if at all, and then kind of head into whether something like Liquid can be seen as a layer 2 or a scaling solution for Bitcoin. And if you've got any other ideas or solutions for this other than Liquid, I know we've got stuff like RSK and Botanics, which I don't really know a lot about, but I believe that they sit under this umbrella as well.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes down to like it's still a custodian. It's essentially like a quote unquote better custodian, because in theory you're not relying on a single entity with sole access and sole discretion of movement of funds to not rug pull you or to not mess up and lose funds. So it's a better custodian, but it absolutely is still trusting a custodian. And it is very infuriating to me to see like Liquid call themselves a layer 2 for Bitcoin when I don't really know how you can call a sidechain that's denominated in its own, like that has its own IOU token that you use on chain, and you hope that you can get your Bitcoin back at the end of the day. In theory, Liquid has been fine. There's been no issues with people being able to swap back and forth between Bitcoin and LBTC over the years. Like in theory, they've been good. It's a broad set of functionaries involved. But it just still is ultimately trusting a custodian with your money. So I don't consider it a layer 2, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's like always bad. It's certainly not my preference. And I think unless like Spark and Arc completely fail, I don't think there's any reason to need these types of side chains or federations for the normal person. I think the one area where this could fit in really well is, and this is like the Fediment model of like village custody or community custody, where maybe like everyone in a community is not going to take custody of funds, but they can trust the core leaders of that community. These are people you know where they live, you can go face to face with them. Like there's a lot of advantages to something like that in that scenario, where those people just wouldn't be using Bitcoin otherwise, but this is a way to enable them to do it with a lot of advantages that they wouldn't have otherwise. But I think generally they're a stopgap, like kind of a coping mechanism to the issues that Bitcoin has had over the years, the issues that Lightning has had over the years. Like we saw this wave of liquid-backed, quote unquote, Lightning wallets that kind of pretend to be Lightning wallets, but they're actually just liquid. And you atomically swap liquid for Lightning when necessary, but you're actually just holding liquid, which means you're actually just holding an IOU for Bitcoin. And I think that's plateaued. I think that is a dead end and has kind of hit its growth limit. But it's really a coping mechanism for like if we can't properly solve these issues with Lightning or with payments on chain or with privacy or with programmability, like then a lot of that will fall back to custodians because it makes things a lot easier when you don't care about trust.
Yeah, definitely makes things easier. Do you think, before we move on from this one, do you think it's the one-to-one peg that allows, I guess, liquid proponents to think that they can call it a layer 2 because of that one-to-one peg, and it's not necessarily like a free-floating token as if you were going to swap between Bitcoin or Monero or something like that? I've always thought that was the main reason that people did it. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but that was the kind of knee-jerk thought that I had there.
Yeah, because how does that change to, like, if you have liquid and it's pegged, it's the same as having anything else that you don't have custody of. It's like, oh, well, you might not be able to get your money back. It's like, well, that's the same for any custodian. Like, it's no different, in my opinion, anyway. And it does have some benefits, like some privacy benefits. And for someone who is going to just give custody over to someone else, then why not? Like, I don't hate it. It's not something that like I generally use or anything, but it's, I don't know, I can see that it is different than swapping out to some other token.
Yeah. While we're on the topic of liquid, Seth, Bon is in the Nostr chat. He said, I'm curious how the conversation went at the state dinner with the Bull Bitcoin guys because they use Liquid Network underneath. Were you being bullish and kind of calling them out on that, or was it all nicey?
No, I mean, honestly, I really respect those guys. Like, I obviously fundamentally disagree with their choice to use Liquid for Lightning. And obviously they're building on Arcade OS right now. And I think that's their long-term vision, that they could use that. I don't know if instead of Liquid, they haven't made that clear if that's like replacing it or will be just an alternative option. Because like specifically Arc won't ever have quite the user experience. I shouldn't say won't ever. Right now would not have the user experience of Liquid. So there may be some users who would rather have the trust trade-off and have something that's a little bit easier to use. But they very much realize the shortcomings of that. But I think they've just gone like a little further. There's this really good slide that Francis made as part of his presentation at Bitcoin Prague last year.
Yeah.
Where he has like this like hard path and easy path. The easy path is you just compromise on everything. The hard path is you find like the minimum compromise to stay within this target outcome. Like there is an ideal outcome where you don't have to make any compromise, but that's almost never functionally or pragmatically possible. But there's this acceptable amount of compromise, and he includes Liquid as an acceptable compromise. Obviously I don't, and I know that there's a wide range of opinions on that, but I think that's okay, to each their own. But I think that like the goal, I'm sure for them as well, would be that they wouldn't need to compromise on trust if Arc pans out to be all it's supposed to. I think that I'm sure that their ideal world would be that they didn't need Liquid because they didn't need to make that trust compromise to have the user experience and the benefits that they have been getting out of it in the short term. Yeah.
All right, cool. The next one is a project called RGB that seems to have been in the periphery of like Bitcoiners for what seems like an eternity, that never ever seems to come to fruition and gain any real user or usage. Is that for good reason? Like, where does RGB fit in all of this? Can it be forgotten about? Do you guys have any hot takes on it? I don't want to spend too long on it because we've got the kind of quote true layer 2s coming up where I want to go into much detail. But yeah, RGB, hot or not?
I think it's one of the many Bitcoin things where I will believe it when I see it actually existing in the real world. Like it just has been this, it feels like since as long as I've been in Bitcoin, RGB has been a thing that's coming soon, or that is like quote unquote live, but is not actually live. and it continues to kind of circle the drain is probably too harsh of a term. It continues to kind of
like that
exist, but it seems like it's just dying slowly. I did, while I was in the Gano, I did hear theoretically it's making progress, and like the Tether folks are going to be building around it and potentially issuing Tether on there. So there's some money flowing into it. It seems like it's one of those things that's just way over engineered and won't ever actually happen. And even now there's like conflicts about the actual spec of the protocol that's going to be used. And yeah, so I assume it will never exist. But if it does actually exist one day in reality, we can definitely chat more about it then. Right now, honestly, I just haven't dug deeply into it because it has seemed to not ever exist.
I'm in exactly the same position. I can remember talking about like very random RGB wallet updates, like when Max and I first started recording years and years ago, and here we are, like in nearly 2026, and it still seems like it hasn't broken through. So, yeah, we'll keep a close eye on it, and just to see whether it does make it down that drain or not. I love that term. I can't believe I've never heard it before, but very nice. All right,
sorry, RGB folks.
Onto the meat of it, right? The by our own earlier definition of unilateral exit, the true layer twos. Here's your opportunity, guys, to call me out. I've made a short list of 4. Have I missed anything before we move on? Lightning, Arc, Spark, and then ZK rollups like Citria, for example, which I know aren't kind of fully fledged out yet. But any other obvious ones that spring to mind before we go into those?
I think that's pretty much it. There's a lot that you can include in the ZK rollup one because there's like different approaches to do that right now. But that's generically kind of the same idea with different implementations. Just like Arc, you could split into multiple, but it's the same underlying thought process, just different implementations right now.
Cool. All right. Well, Lightning, like Max and I on the brief have spoken about Lightning at length. At a high level, it's a peer-to-peer network that uses bidirectional payment channels, and then you can hop through your peer to another peer and then to another peer, like a little bit like Tor, so that you can reach to pay people that are also on the network without having a direct relationship or channel with them. That enables, when it works, very fast payments, sometimes low fee payments, depending on the route, etc., and the fees along the route, so that you can get much, much closer to the kind of utopia of instant payments while still, having that security to exit unilaterally on chain, so that your channel partner or channel partners, if you've got multiple channels, cannot simply just run away and steal all of your Bitcoin, which obviously would make it fall short of our true layer 2 definition. With all of that complexity comes some user experience downfalls, namely in terms of the need to open and close channels, which are on-chain transactions. They attract fees. You've also got channel management, where if you're only spending out through your channel, then you're quickly going to run out of what we call a local balance, and then you need to do some more jiggery pokery to kind of top that back up so that you can continue spending. Obviously, if you're a bit more of a merchant where you've got a two-way channel, that can be less of a headache for you, but it's definitely something to consider. And what we've seen with Lightning is that it's very much gravitated towards a hub and spoke model, where most people, particularly those that are non or less technical, have gravitated towards solutions like Phoenix, or even to custodial solutions like Wallet of Satoshi, where a lot of that headache is managed for you. That comes with trade-offs. In the olden days with Wallet of Satoshi, the trade-off was custody. It was a custodial wallet. And then in terms of like Zeus with an LSP, Lightning Service Provider, or with Phoenix, the trade-off generally is privacy and is with fees, where you're paying them to have a service and to manage the channels for you. That means that it can be a very slick user experience. Phoenix particularly is excellent and the best way to get onboarded. But there's only so far you can get in terms of obfuscation before you still hit hurdles in terms of like opening channels and things like that. So I guess before we move on to the other solutions, because again, Lightning, everybody kind of has the basics on Lightning. Have I missed anything obvious there, guys, particularly in terms of the shortcomings? around channel management, etc., because that will perfectly set the scene for the conversation about Arc and Spark that we're about to have.
I think the only like minor thing I would add is, and you touched on it a little bit, is just that Lightning is not trustless. Like I think a lot of the simple marketing around Lightning has been that it's like just this trustless L2 and nothing can go wrong. And I know that a lot of people maybe don't intend it to be that simplified when talking about it, but there are a lot of trust elements in Lightning, especially the way that most people use Lightning. Like if you're using something like Phoenix, those guys have built an absolutely amazing piece of software, but it relies on a lot of trust in Async, the company. They do just-in-time channels, which means that they own the entire balance until it confirms. They could rug pull when you first open a channel. They are the ones who you're completely reliant on them monitoring your channel and managing channel state. You're not running a node all the time. You don't have a watchtower that keeps an eye to make sure that they don't lie about the channel state and try to steal funds. There's a lot of trust put in the counterparty right now in the way that most people are using Lightning. And while you do theoretically have unilateral exit, where you could always force close the channel if the counterparty is misbehaving, that would require you to know that the channel party is misbehaving and come online in enough time to be able to unilaterally exit and punish them for it. And that's something that's just really tricky in the current way that Lightning works, with most people not actually running a node and relying on just their mobile phone for that process. So just kind of calling that out, because we'll touch on some of the trust trade-offs in other systems. And a lot of times people think of, okay, Lightning is trustless, but all these solutions have trust trade-offs. Why are we compromising? And it's not really that simple. So yeah.
Yep, good call out. All right, before we hit Arc and Spark, ZK rollups, like what's the state of play there, Seth? I know you've had conversations previously with some of the builders in this space. Like, is it too new for us to dive into at the moment, or does it show a lot of promise? Like, could you give us a quick high level of some of the solutions or pending solutions in that field?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, they're very, very promising, and they open up a lot of potential for being able to do more advanced functionality off-chain. Things like if you wanted a Monero or Zcash style privacy, again, layer 2 or sidechain, it gets a little weird, but I would probably say it's a layer 2. I think I would include it in that. You could do that. You can do like full EVM style smart contracts. You can do very advanced functionality off chain, and then you use zero knowledge proofs, not for the privacy perspective. A lot of people hear ZK proofs or zero knowledge and they think privacy. In this case, the ZK proof is being used to prove the state of the ZK rollup in a way that's very succinct. So ZK snarks or starks, the S in that stands for succinct, which means that you can have a proof be very small, even if actually validating or creating the proof takes a long time. The proof itself is tiny and a fixed size. So like 64 bytes would be a proof of the state of a ZK rollup, for instance. So you can do a lot of crazy stuff and then publish that proof. The sequencers or validators in that ZK rollup publish this proof on chain. And then anyone can check that proof and validate the state to make sure that those sequencers and validators aren't lying. And if they do lie, there's this whole process of essentially punishing them and slashing their Bitcoin that they're holding as part of that. The main drawback to these right now, one, the actual like the zero knowledge proof used, that system is very complex and is changing very rapidly. There's been a huge breakthrough that I do not remember the full meaning of what it stands for, but the acronym is GLOCK. Is this new approach to be able to use what are called garbled circuits, like a very old zero knowledge proof mechanism, but a way to basically do this proof in a way that requires like terabytes of data off chain, but on chain just requires this one very small proof. And the actual process of slashing or proving fraud is much easier than like BitVM and others that were the initial ways that this type of thing was going to be done. The main drawback of all these, though, is really that they do have a trust model in terms of custody, where you're essentially trusting that at least one of the validators or sequencers, whatever they're called in the given system, are honest. Because if all of them are malicious, you're essentially bridging funds into this layer 2. And if all of those parties are malicious that handle the funds for the bridge, they could steal funds. But if any of them are honest, no one can steal funds without getting caught and punished. So I think it's a reasonable trust assumption, but it is a bit different than some of the other layer 2s that we'll talk about here.
All right, and fair to say that there's no kind of user-facing applications for this just yet. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's not. It seems like Citria is the closest, but there's a lot of others building around this, building around Glock, building around BitVM2. There's a lot of promising developments, but it's still very early. So I wouldn't assume that anything like this will come like within the next few months or something, but nothing right now.
Got it. Okay, thanks for that overview. All right, onto the hot topic that everybody seems to be talking about at the moment. And they seem to be getting used interchangeably, and that's Arc and Spark. I believe under the hood they are somewhat similar, but maybe is it a fair assumption to say that for these two protocols to be discussed in the same vein, Seth, or is that kind of a bit of a faux pas? So give us a heads up on that one, and maybe outline how they work and the kind of differentiators between the two, because this seems to be the big thing at the moment in terms of scaling Bitcoin and L2 that everybody's super excited about, myself included, to be clear.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that they're useful to talk about together because right now the primary use case for both is an easier way to do Lightning wallets. So instead of the liquid backed model where you're trusting a custodian with funds and then doing these atomic swaps to Lightning, in Arc and Spark, you can essentially have your funds off-chain in Arc or Spark and do atomic swaps with a Lightning service provider to make Lightning payments. But you're not giving up custody of your funds. You have much better trust assumptions than you have with Liquid, or obviously with a wallet of Satoshi custodial system, something like that. So when we're talking about just that payments angle, I think they are useful to talk about together. But they're kind of different in what their focus is if you expand past that. Like, for instance, if you look at Spark, the focus for them is really on payments, both within Spark and via Lightning, and tokens. There's not a lot of programmability focus right now in Spark. There's already some like decentralized exchanges being built on top of Spark, but the trust model there is a little unclear. It's something that I'm trying to dig into, but haven't had the chance yet. But they're very like laser focused on payments, token issuance, and token transfers. Like you being able to use something like a stable coin or mint your own token on Spark and be able to send it in a way that is trust minimized is a core focus for them. So that's really like the thing that they're mostly focused on right now, and the thing that I think their system is built really, really well for. But then Arc gets weird because there's two potential implementations. There's Arcade OS, which is being built by Arc Labs, and there's an implementation by the folks at Second. The second implementation is focusing primarily on payments up front, but with a plan to do more programmability, while Arcade OS is really, they're really focusing on programmability. So being able to do more advanced functionality with your Bitcoin, but with good trust assumptions. Things like doing Bitcoin lending in a way that is nearly trustless and much easier for the company to do than like right now you can do this on Bitcoin, but you have to do it with DLCs, and DLCs are really complex to build around with Bitcoin right now. Like there's probably 10 people in the world that could write DLC based smart contracts, whereas doing it within Arcade OS is much, much simpler. So they're really focused on like broad programmability and building out this OS like system where you can do a lot of things that you wouldn't be able to do on Bitcoin naturally, while also covering payments. That's something that they just kind of get out of the way that the system is built, because it's built to be very Bitcoin-like. But I do think talking about them together is useful, because right now the exposure most people will get will be that Lightning wallets, I think, will be primarily switching to using Spark or Arc. Like the vast majority, I think, will do that moving forward outside of the unique entities like Async and Phoenix Wallet. But yeah, talking about them together, I think, is useful for now.
Okay, cool. Vibrant just commented on Twitter, said, I'm too dumb for this. I hear some words like arcade and fruit roll-ups. With that in mind, Arc and Spark, like, can we, I gave a high level before about Lightning, how it works with like bidirectional payment channels between two peers, and you can hop through peers to pay, distant people on the network that you don't have a direct relationship with. That's how this kind of scaling solution at a very, very, very high level works. How does Arc differ from that, and what are the kind of pros and cons of using something like Arc or Spark to achieve the scaling? versus something like Lightning, which is, at the moment, the de facto scaling solution that we've had for a number of years.
Yeah, I'll be honest. If I fully explained this, we would be here long past when we're supposed to wrap up. So I'll keep it very short.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, and we can link. I just wrote a piece for Bitcoin Mag that talks exactly through this and specifically focuses on trust assumptions and privacy trade-offs. But the TLDR of it is that Arc inherits a lot of the functionality of Bitcoin. It uses the UTXO model, but with what they call virtual TXOs, because those aren't all existing on chain. And it essentially lets you share UTXOs in a way that is trust minimized. You can exit at any time. You get unilateral exit. You generally have good trust assumptions. For the most part, you will be relying on a previous sender and the ARC operator not colluding to double spend funds. They will be able to do that unless you join a collaborative signing round. It kind of in practice, it works like a coin join, not from a privacy perspective, but just from how you're coordinating with a central entity and other users to create a collaborative transaction. If you do that, you get Bitcoin level finality, where at that point the ARC operator and previous sender cannot collude to double spend funds, and you get really strong trust assumptions in that sense. But the way that ARC works, the complexity that brings with those signing rounds, especially on mobile, most users are not going to be doing that. So you'll generally be relying on that trust assumption where you're hoping that the ARC operator and a previous sender do not collude to double spend funds. But I know that sounds a little scary. Obviously, there's clear financial incentives for the ARC operator not to do that. They're not going to steal your $10 in Bitcoin and ruin their multi-million-dollar business. There are good incentives for them not to do that, but it is still a trust assumption. But the nice thing in ARC is, like I said, you can remove that trust assumption if you have the time and can go through that signing process with other users to gain strong finality. But the other thing it really opens up, because it inherits a lot of the stuff from Bitcoin, like scripting, like HTLCs, like atomic swaps, you can do things like Lightning. Instead of just the atomic swap with a Lightning service provider, you can actually build Lightning channels within ARC. So they're looking at something called Spillman channels, which is a unidirectional channel where, let's say me and a merchant I frequently use are both using ARC. Instead of me passing them ARC VTXOs every time I want to pay, I could actually just open a unidirectional channel with them and just continually pay using that and only close it once I exhaust the balance. And unlike on-chain, I don't need to pay those on-chain channel closure fees whenever I do that. So it can help with the speed, it can help with costs as well, and let us do extra functionality. So there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do within it, but that's kind of the TLDR, and the main trust assumption is that hope that the ARC operator and the previous sender do not collude, or you can kind of opt out of that trust assumption if you have the time to go through that signing process and get full finality.
Okay, cool. Yeah, appreciate that. Some pointed questions here to kind of eke out a bit more of the kind of how it works in terms of ARC and Spark. What are the you mentioned around joining around and things like that. Presumably, as a user, I can do that whenever I want, and there would be an associated fee for that. Is that correct?
So this is where we get into a lot of stuff that's theory and not known in practice. Okay. ARC fees specifically are a little weird. So we're very used to Bitcoin, you pay a fee based on the size of the transaction, which makes sense because you're choosing to store that information in Bitcoin's blockchain forever. So you need to pay a requisite fee to get that transaction in and to get it in before other people. Within ARC,
the size of the data.
Yeah, sorry. Yes. Yeah, the size of the data of the transaction, not the actual amount in sats. Yeah, you're right. In ARC, that is very different. So the fee model is quite complex and is not set in stone yet. Basically, how it will work, and this gets into a whole nother side of ARC, and this is why I said we can easily be here all day. Within ARC operators are essentially constantly fronting liquidity, providing Bitcoin liquidity to users within ARC. If, for instance, I receive a Lightning payment into ARC, that ARC operator doesn't actually get the Bitcoin at that moment, but I need to be able to spend that Bitcoin as a VTXO. So they're fronting me liquidity, but they have a way to reclaim that liquidity and get that Bitcoin amount back, not take custody. Like it's really hard to explain this stuff quickly, but they need a way to be able to essentially reclaim that liquidity and get the Bitcoin back that they've loaned out, for lack of a better word. So every roughly like 30 days, the VTXOs that you get within ARK will expire and will have then shared ownership between you and the ARK operator, and either of you can move those funds. That's necessary so that they can reclaim liquidity at the end. The way that should work is that you refresh, you get a new VTXO. You work with the ARK operator to do that. And basically how long into the life cycle of that VTXO you wait to do that will change how fees work. It's really complex. It's really theoretical. In theory, if you keep your VTXO longer, you will pay more in fees. If you get a new VTXO sooner, you'll pay less in fees. But it's not going to be like a per transfer kind of thing the same way we're used to. It won't have anything to do with the amount of like the size of the transaction in terms of data. It'll be quite different. But you should expect that the fees will be much lower than on-chain.
Got it. All right. As a user, like what does it look like to interact with an ARK wallet? I know there's a few that are kind of starting to come out now with alphas and stuff like that. Is the experience similar? Do I just have invoices and addresses and send and receive buttons, or is it a lot more complex than that?
Yeah, so because a lot of the complexity, like both ARK and Spark sound really complex, but all that complexity is on the operator side and the wallet SDK side, not on the user side. The main pain point with Lightning is that there's only so much that like a wallet dev can do to simplify the user experience, because there's just so many like architectural hurdles within Lightning. With ARK and Spark, that's very different. So they sound very complex on their face, but for a user, like for ARK specifically, if you're okay with that trust assumption of assuming that the ARK operator and a previous sender won't collude to double spend, then you will get essentially a liquid-backed Lightning wallet-like experience where you can receive funds within ARK using an ARK address, just like you would with a Bitcoin address, or you can send and receive Lightning payments just like you would expect to do within a Lightning wallet. Very fast. Right now, no fees. Like I said, that will change, but right now, no fees. On the ARK side, there will be some for the Lightning side. And it should feel very seamless, very fast, practically instant for the ARK side and the Lightning side. So that's the goal. We'll see exactly how that plays out, because there's a lot of complexity there, especially with the VTXO refresh and how that works in practice. But that's the goal, is that it will feel like that. And early on, it's promising.
Okay, onto privacy with ARK and Spark. Like, what's the privacy trade-offs there? You mentioned earlier, like it's similar to a coin join, but without the privacy. Can you spell out, like, if I'm interacting with an ARK operator and I got all these wonderful, simple onboarding, simple user experience, no need to manage channels, etc. Am I giving away a lot of privacy here? Can the operator see everything I'm doing? Like, what does that landscape look like at the moment, at least?
Yeah, so right now with both, you should basically assume you have a Bitcoin-like privacy model, but one with ephemerality. So only the ARK operator or the Spark entity would see all transactions, and they're not published for the world to see. They're not published on a blockchain for all time. So you gain that ephemerality where like just a naive outside observer won't be able to see your transactions. But you should assume it's kind of like the VPN trust model. The ARK operator and the Spark entity have full visibility into transactions and can see everything, just like a normal person could see everything you do on a Bitcoin transaction. In theory, both systems can have some privacy that we can't do on chain. Like on the Spark side, they've already had plans for hiding amounts, so doing confidential transactions, but confidential amounts is a better name, basically hiding the amounts in transactions. You can do things on the Spark side like blind signing. So in theory, they could actually make it where even the Spark entity can't see the details of any transaction. They've said that they won't do that they have some other privacy plans that are a bit vague. But even just hidden amounts plus the ephemerality of not every transaction being published to a blockchain would be good for privacy, but can be much better. And on the ARK side, it's pretty similar. You're inheriting all the privacy problems from Bitcoin. The ARK operator sees everything about your transactions. But because you can do all the same things in Arcade OS, for instance, as you can do In Bitcoin, you could do something like build out CoinJoin within Arcade, where you can do rounds every minute, every 5 minutes, every hour, whatever you want. You can do them very rapidly. You're not dependent on the block time in Bitcoin. You're not paying all of the on-chain fees as you are if you're doing it on layer 1 Bitcoin. So you can re-implement a lot of the privacy technology that people have built out for Bitcoin into something like Arcade OS. But you'll still have all of the downsides of that privacy technology. Like you can't recombine funds freely, or you're going to lose that privacy. You'll have all of the same things. So it's very similar to Bitcoin, but you can do things faster. You can do probably some more advanced stuff that has yet to be developed. And you have that ephemerality where only the ARC operator knows about that, but they could publish it at any time. They could be forced by law enforcement to log. Like it is very much a VPN-like trust model in terms of privacy, as it is now.
Yeah. Okay. I've seen some horror stories on Nostra and Twitter at the moment. People raising alarm about the privacy trade-offs of one of the first movers in the Spark ecosystem, which is Wallet of Satoshi. They've moved to or an optional non-custodial option that is backed by the Spark protocol. Can you give us just a quick high level, like what are people complaining about there, and is it as bad as people are saying it is in terms of privacy?
Yeah. So the short story is Wallet of Satoshi launched too early and made some really poor choices that like compounded the privacy issues in Spark today. Well, really before today, because they're already better. And they made some unnecessary choices theoretically to help the user experience that made the privacy even worse. So there's there's basically three main issues that they have that don't need to exist and won't exist. Like by the end of the year, all of these will be fixed. Some of them are already fixed right now. But it's the combination of when you share a Lightning invoice in Wallet of Satoshi, they actually encode your Spark address in the invoice, which isn't necessarily a bad thing to do. Other wallets have done that in the space before as well, so that you can pay within Spark if you're also a Spark user and save the fees of going over Lightning. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's paired with the inability to rotate addresses within a Wallet of Satoshi. You have one static Spark address and you can't change it. You can't get a new one. And that's due to a fundamental issue right now with Spark that is being resolved by the end of the year, which is that you can't spend from multiple addresses within Spark. That's already obviously a known issue. It's going to be fixed. But because you can't spend from multiple addresses, if you're rotating addresses, spending gets really weird. And then that's further compounded by the fact that a Spark operator was publishing all transactions to an Explorer, so you could just see everything that was going on. Again, that doesn't have to happen. That's already been changed so that wallet developers can opt out of that, so that their users' transactions are not published to that Explorer. But the combination of you can't rotate addresses, your address is published in every Lightning invoice that you share, and anyone can look up all the transactions for a given address on an Explorer was a really bad combo, and unnecessarily bad, like absolutely unnecessary, and will be resolved, but was definitely a bad look and not a good idea for Wallet of Satoshi to do that. Unnecessary for sure.
I see. Thanks for clearing that up. So it sounds like it's going to be, or can be fixed fairly easily in the coming months, which is good to hear. Max, you've been quiet over there. Just want to check you're still awake and if you've got any questions related to Arc and Spark.
Awake, a little bit lost, if I'm honest. But yeah, I mean, it sounds good in theory, all this stuff, other than the Wallet of Satoshi clusterfuck that we covered on the brief. Wasn't someone doing like a Explorer, like a doxing Explorer? Mm-hmm. I'm sure we mentioned. Who made that?
Yeah, it was one of the Spark operators, Flashnet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. This is all a little bit over my head.
Let me summarize.
Go on.
Yeah. Go on. Yeah. Just let me give a 2-second summary. I think I dove too deep into the technical here and probably lost a lot of people. The short story is both Arc and Spark are really promising to give you way better Lightning wallets with really good trust assumptions, and can provide better privacy and cooler things built on top of it, tokens, Bitcoin lending, etc., all without sacrificing custody of your funds, all while retaining unilateral exit, all while giving you really good self-custodial options. So that's what these things are going to provide. The technical details are very in flux and are very complex and are changing rapidly. those aren't as important. But the more important thing is more people have access to Lightning wallets without giving up custody, with a good user experience, with the ability to do more advanced stuff down the line. And that's really exciting.
Good summary.
Indeed. So let's cap it off with some practical advice, because we are at time. If somebody is excited about all the wonderful explainers that you've just done, Seth, and they want to get to grips with Arc and Spark, where can they go and do it now? Maybe, as we've just outlined, maybe not Wallet of Satoshi, or going in with a big pinch of salt, knowing that the privacy is not great at the moment for the Wallet of Satoshi Spark solution. Outside of that, where else can people go if they want to get their hands dirty and be very, very careful, guys? Like, this is alpha software. Like, where can they go and play with this sort of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, it's really early for both. So Spark is further along. I think if you're just testing, I think trying it with Wallet of Satoshi is totally fine. But definitely understand those privacy hurdles. But that can give you a feel of like what the user experience will be like. When it comes to Arc, there's really kind of two options. So Arcade themselves have published a web wallet that you can use as a progressive web app that works reasonably well. It's buggy, but it works reasonably well. There's growing pains. So you can use that to try it out right now. Alternatively, Bull Bitcoin have a super experimental implementation of Arc in their wallet, but I think it's like hidden behind a hidden switch somewhere. I don't remember exactly how to access it, because they essentially don't want people using it too early, because it is very, very early days. This is very much if you want to be on the cutting edge. That's great. If you just want to wait till you have something usable, hold on, it's not quite ready yet.
Sounds good. All right, we are over time. Thank you very much for your explains today, Seth. That was very insightful. And yeah, I'm very bullish on Arc and Spark and what they can do for Lightning wallets in the short term, should I say, and then all of the awesome programmable stuff that I know you know Alex has been talking about with Arc specifically. That all excites me, but it's probably a number of years off just yet. So temper your expectations and tread carefully if you are going to play with this stuff. So yeah, thank you very much for coming to Freedom Tech Friday. Happy Halloween, and we will be back for more of the same at the same time next week, where I think daylight savings time is aligned once again. So we will be 9 a.m. Eastern and 2 p.m. in the UK. Thanks for stopping by, Seth and Max, and have a good one all.
Have a good weekend.
See you next week.
Thank you for listening to Freedom Tech Friday. To everyone who boosted, asked questions, and participated in the show, we appreciate you all. Make sure to join us next week on Friday at 9 a.m. EST and 2 p.m. London. Thanks to Seth, Max, and Q for keeping it ungovernable. And thank you to Cake Wallet, Foundation, and my NIM box for keeping the ungovernable misfits going. Make sure to check out ungovernablemisfits.com to see Mr. Crown's incredible skills and artwork. Listen to the other shows in the feed to hear Kareem's world-class editing skills. Thanks to Expatriotic for keeping us up to date with Boost's XMR chats and sending in topics. John, great name and great guy, never change and never stop keeping us up to date with mining news or continuing to grow the mesh to Dell. Finally, a big thanks to the unsung hero, our Canadian overlord, Jordan, for trying to keep the ungovernable in check and for the endless work he puts in behind the scenes. We love you all. Stay ungovernable.